A badge of honor. Police officers and first responders wear badges to let their communities know they are here to protect and serve. But that's not how it feels today, and the stress of the job is taking its toll, taking lives through suicide and post-traumatic stress injury. A Badge of Honor podcast features the cast of the same name, Sam Horwitz and John Salerno. Sam, John, and the team offer the first responders workshops through their critical incident stress management teams and mental health liaisons to offer state-certified T-COLE credit programs that save lives. It's time to smash through the stigma. It's time to heal from your injury, and it's time to back our blue. Welcome to A Badge of Honor podcast. Here are your hosts, Sam Horwitz and John Salerno.
Hey, welcome to A Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam, powered by the OBBM network. Man, Sam, I'm still so excited about what the OBBM network has done for us, putting on us so many different platforms, and now on Roku TV, so everybody can get their Mental Health Monday fix and really enjoy the resources that we want to share with all our first responders. So once again, big shout out to OBBM network.
Absolutely. And you can watch here or Roku tomorrow. We'll call it Terrific Tuesday. How about that?
Oh yeah, Terrific Tuesday. Last week, we dedicated the show to a couple of fallen first responders and police officers. But this week, I really want to dedicate the show to all those firefighters and first responders out in West Texas battling that horrific wildfire. I think it's over 400,000 acres or something, or
over a million.
I don't know the exact number, but it's a huge fire out in the Panhandle.
Yeah, over 1 million acres. Footage that you can watch, daily. It's tremendous. You can almost, John, based upon what we did for a living, you can almost put ourselves in the vehicles, responding vehicles with them, and listening to the power of the wind. You don't understand how wind really fuels these fires until you hear it. And it is powerful, and just God bless them. Let's say a little prayer because it is very dangerous, it is very real, and we are thinking about them. And I hope that the departments have brought in. I read a couple stories about having chaplains on standby, their crisis teams, because hey, the statistics don't lie. We know all about the time needed for decompression. Shifts are required. We know there's going to be interrupted sleep. A lot of things are going into fighting these fires, the coordination of all of that. And, in that, our guest tonight that we have on the podcast.
Before you bring that up, I just want to bring up one more thing, and it's related to our guest. Ohio, a big shout out to Ohio firefighters as well. I don't know if you saw that dramatic rescue over the Ohio River with the tractor trailer that went off the bridge. I don't know if you have a chance, Google that. Firefighter repelled off the bridge off a ladder truck. About 25, 30 feet over the raging waters and ice cold waters of the river, pulled the driver out of the cab of the truck and lifted her back up. Our first responders don't know what they're going to do each and every day. They go out, nobody knows that they're going to perform that type of rescue. And they had an interview and they were you scared? And he goes, this is what we trained for. This is what we're geared for. And God bless all of our first responders for facing that unknown each and every day, not knowing what they're going to get into. And thank God you guys come home safely. God bless.
Yeah. And that's part of what attracts us to the job, right? Is that we get to have different experiences, meet people, and do cool things, and then do things that stay with us. And then we got to deal with that. And I think that's a great lead into our guests tonight on the podcast are Barbara Rubel and Jason Palamara. They got together and wrote this amazing book called Living Blue, and they have got powerful stories that they put in there, as well as drawing from the experts in the field on how to really live and be healthy as an officer, thrive as an officer, as well as a family unit. So let's bring them on. Barbara Rubel and Jason Palamara, welcome to a Back podcast.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you
for having us.
You bet. Jason, we will start with you. Just tell everybody watching and listening about you.
Thank you. Well, Sam, John, thank you for having us both. And I'm Jason Palamara. I retired after 20 years with the NYPD. My last, thanks. You as well, John. I was last with the cold case homicide squad. Spent my whole career in downtown Brooklyn. Right as I was around thinking about retirement, pandemic was just starting. Right before the pandemic, I became a peer counselor with the NYPD. Throughout the pandemic, I wound up becoming a crisis intervention counselor with a local crisis center, which I still do. And not long after retirement, I'm on with Forge Health, a behavioral healthcare company, specifically overseeing their veteran and first responder engagement. So really acting as that liaison between my old colleagues, right, first responders, and the smarter people in the room, the clinicians that are going to really give that care that we need, that are culturally competent to do so. And then, social media, as its positives and negatives, it has been a huge positive. That's where Barbara and I first met one another. I reached out to Barbara with a crazy idea. And I don't know if it was a crazy idea or she was just crazy to accept it. We dove into writing Living Blue together. It wasn't called Living Blue at the beginning, but my wife will remind me every day that she took credit for that name. We're happy that we're finally able to offer it to folks.
What a wonderful collaboration, and it's funny you say you reached out to her on social media. And I was just discussing this with a couple of peers the other day. It's like one thing in life can change the trajectory of the rest of your life. Like how me and Sam met. It was just one thing, one introduction makes a big difference in your life. So don't be scared to reach out.
That is so true. And I was a little timid to make that phone call, send that message. And my wife said, what's the worst thing that can happen? She could tell you she's not interested. Well, the exact opposite happened. And I'm so fortunate that she's not only been my co-author, but a mentor. And, we talk a lot about transitioning out of our roles as first responders. Barbara has been somebody that has helped me with that transition, just as it's worked out.
Well, one thing with Jason, with you, let me just revert back a little bit. You had a different type of career in the NYPD because you come out of that academy class from 9/11, right? So, I remember back in the academy where, you learned all these skills and you don't really know what you're enduring once you hit the streets. You guys were smacked right in the face with the most horrific terrorist event in the world right out of the academy. What were you thinking?
Before actually the academy, right, Jason? This was before you got out. I remember
you out of the academy, right?
Buses, yeah.
Yeah, we started July 2nd, 2001. So it was about 2 months right before the attacks. So yes, they pulled us out of the academy for 9/11. And then when they realized that we were cheap labor and we were at the lowest in the totem pole, they pulled us out for a few other things too. But yes, that was our first job.
What was that kind of like? Hey, welcome to the job.
Almost.
What went through your head? I mean, as a young officer.
Yeah, it was kind of twofold. One, I'll be honest, nervous, scared. I don't know. I barely, maybe I visited the city twice as a child on a school trip. So not only am I new to the city as a Long Island kid, I'm now being thrust out and being told to tell people what to do, right? We were directing traffic. But we write about it in the book. I learned early on why they sent us out with academy instructors, because people were happy to remind us that we weren't real cops yet. So it was, but it was exciting. It was exciting to actually be doing that work so soon after. Yeah. So it was a bit of both.
Yeah. I remember you guys getting off the trucks and seeing you as, World Trade 7, last one to come down that day. Barbara, we want to hear your experience, which is you have a phenomenal story as well. We got to take our first break real quick. We will be right back with Barbara to introduce herself. Stay tuned, everybody.
All right.
Move freely, America, without medical restrictions or penalty. Without medical freedom legislation in place, our rights and freedoms are one vote away from being dissolved. Move freely, America, with one voice, without fear of retribution, achieving a common goal, medical freedom. We the people make our voices heard by connecting with state legislators and engaging a constitutionally compliant medical Bill of Rights for all citizens. Individually, change is improbable, but as an aggregate, attainable. It's time to act with one voice. My voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
To protect our freedom, creating one voice that cannot be ignored. This requires your voice, too. Move Freely America. Go to movefreelyamerica.org to find a chapter near you. Plug in, donate, and help our legislators defend our God-given rights under the Constitution. Move Freely America. My voice.
And my voice.
And together with your voice, we're one voice that cannot be ignored. Donate today. MoveFreelyAmerica.org.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam with our wonderful guests, Jason and Barbara. Before we took the quick break, Jason was giving us a little background about himself, retired NYPD and from the cold case squad and thrusted into the depths of 9/11 from the academy class. So now we're going to switch it over to Barbara. Barbara, how you guys collaborated, and thank you so much for being part of Badge of Honor.
Thank you for inviting us. It's a very exciting time to co-author a book, especially with a retired police officer, because both of my parents were police officers. My father was a sergeant, and he retired after 20 years on the force, and my mother was a policewoman, and she retired after 30 years on the force.
Wow.
Yeah, she became a police officer after serving as a WAC in the Army in World War II. So she was one of the first police officers in New York City when they had to wear a skirt
and a cap,
a nice little pocketbook, and she looked so attractive going to work. And she was so upset because they would not allow her to drive a police car. I remember that was a bone of contention between the sergeant, my father, and the policewoman who wasn't allowed. But my father, after retiring, he died by suicide. And he killed himself while I was in the hospital giving birth to not one baby, not twins, but triplets.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it was horrific because I couldn't attend the funeral. I couldn't attend the wake. I couldn't be there for my family. It was just an unbelievable time. But it set me on this journey for suicide prevention, intervention, postvention. I've been working in the field of postvention for almost 30 years. My father died in 1986. So I ran suicide loss support groups. I wrote, but I didn't say goodbye, helping families after a suicide. I did so much with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I really got involved. I needed to do something because I could not be there for my dad. His suicide note talked about deteriorating discs. And so when I'm talking to officers, because I'm a keynote speaker and trainer, I will always want to stress the fact that it's not just depression. It's not just PTSD. It's what's going on at home. It's their high ACEs score from when they were a child. And in my father's case, it's physical pain. A lot of first responders retire in pain, not just in their mind, but in their body. So that's why this book is so important, because Jason and I not only shared our stories, which impacted us and impact so many others who have lived this horror. But we recognize that the research and the studies back what we're talking about. We're not just sharing our stories, we're backing it up with evidence-based studies. And also, Jason and I reached out to so many contributors, police chiefs, mental health professionals like Stephen Porges and Bob Niemeyer and so many police chiefs. So it is a compilation of storytelling, lost narratives, trauma, and evidence-based research to back it up. So we're very excited to share this brand new book, Living Blue, and we are so appreciative of those who have bought the book or about to buy the book, but also just want to say that if you are a suicide loss survivor like myself, or if you're struggling with mental health issues, you are not alone. There are podcasts like this. There are organizations dedicated to helping you. And that's the most important thing. You have to reach out because it's about community. It is about a peer. It's about someone who can contain your story, wants to listen, and will help you.
Barbara, back in 1986, there wasn't really that many. I think we were just touching on crisis intervention, and that's only after a huge trauma happened. So we weren't even in the field of mental health back then. Thinking back, were there any signs or cues or flags that you would have probably noticed now with your education and your background and your awareness that you may have been able to notice back then? Back then we didn't have it. So, but looking back, what do you think?
Yes, withdrawal, definitely with my father's case. But with suicide, we have to look at burdensome. Did he feel as though he would have been a burden to his family? So many people, patients say, why would your father kill himself right before you're about to give birth to triplets? Well, I always respond, is it better the day of the birth or the day after? Is there a really good day to kill yourself? Never a good day. So we have to look at belongingness, and we have to look at how is he feeling? What was he thinking? And we really don't know. There's so many studies on look at the risk factors, look at the warning signs. But if we really knew how to prevent a suicide, there would be no suicide.
Right.
We're trying to figure it out. But what I see from talking to so many officers and firefighters and EMTs is that the pain from what their childhood, their history on the job, or whatever went on in trauma in their life is in their body. So we can't just talk about it. We need to move it somatically. And that's why somatic experiencing, I think, is going to wind up really preventing suicide in the long run. But it's kind of a new thing we're talking about.
Absolutely. Barbara, you started off by using a word. I mean, we're all familiar with, prevention and inoculation. Dr. Olivia Johnson, we've had her on the podcast, but you said a word, postvention. And I hadn't heard of this. And, it's kind of like towards the end a little bit of the book. Can you explain to everybody watching and listening what postvention actually means?
Thank you, Sam. That is my specialty. Postvention is what is done in the aftermath of a suicide. How can we help the community, the family, the friends, the people impacted? The first responders are also impacted. At least 135 people are impacted by a suicide. Some very, very close, like my dad and I, and others could be a first responder or an educated teacher where you find out a student from 5 years ago died, but we are all impacted by it. So Ed Schneidman is the father of suicidology, and he was a psychiatrist. And many years ago, he said, where do you hurt and how can I help you? And that's what it comes down to with postvention, whether in the school system, because I'm in every system, judicial system, education, healthcare, mental health care, because suicide hits every system. So postvention, you have to basically modify it and adapt it to your system and see what works. But basically, bottom line, it's taking care of the people after a suicide.
Okay. Yeah. And that is important because, especially with the departments that we're close to, that we've worked directly with is it's always, hey, this coming together to support each other because we've suffered a loss, but there's no plan. There's no framework for most departments on what that looks like. Everybody's scrambling to make sure everybody's okay, bringing in food, providing lunch, dinner, the crisis support, but
that's
just
the
like
problem.
grasping at straws.
That is the problem, Sam. That is the problem, because they're focusing on the trauma. My master's is in thanatology. I'm a thanatologist. I'm a specialist in sudden traumatic death. That's why I'm never invited to any parties. They hear what I do and they're like, "We're not inviting that lady."
Barbara, how do you say that word again? I'm sorry.
Thanatology. I am a thanatologist.
I had trouble with that one, John, too. I was like,
nobody knows what it is, and they think they're very impressed until I tell them what I do. I worked in hospice for years, but my specialty is traumatic loss. And so being a speaker, I go to all these conferences and trauma conferences. But my specialty is traumatic loss. How do we deal with sudden death in the community? And so I meet with the leaders and the supervisors and the teams to learn about grief, traumatic loss, prolonged grief disorder. And then I use that to educate them about a vicarious trauma-informed community. It's not just trauma-informed. Jason and I focus in on being vicarious trauma informed. And so we utilize the knowledge of trauma. I utilize my knowledge of grief. We bring all these contributors together and we enlighten communities and keep them healthy. Bottom line.
Yeah, we got to take another quick break. Jason, when we come back, we're going to dive into the book and talk about some of the experiences that brought you guys together to help explain how law enforcement officers and families can thrive from recruitment to retirement. We'll be right back after these messages.
Interested in starting a podcast or TV show? Worried about what you'll say and how to keep it engaging? Think you'd like to be a guest on podcast, radio, or TV shows? Hi, I'm Susan Hamilton, owner and founder of OBBM Network, and I would like to invite you to an OBBM media training to get the tools you need for a relaxed and polished performance we'll be proud to share. Our specialized training techniques include role play, voice training, and everything you need to deliver a confident, clear, and engaging interaction. Go to offbeatbusiness.com. Go to the calendar and register for a training that's convenient for you. Dates available now, 214-714-0495.
Hey, as they say in Bensonhurst, how you doing? Welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam, with our great guests, Jason and Barbara, co-authors of Living Blue. Before we took our break, Barbara, you were talking about that vicarious trauma, and I think that's a huge thing. One of our partners in a Badge of Honor that does our workshops with us, when we talk about sudden trauma, and the words people use, it will get easier. The pain will go away over time. But as a law enforcement or a first responder, that pain is constantly poked and it's constantly prodded with every job you go on, with every traumatic experience you see, brings you back the reminder. And one of our partners in a Badge of Honor has experienced this over and over and over again. What do you say to those that have experienced it, but that happened a year ago? How do they deal with that?
What I like to look at is how they have found meaning in it. When you make meaning out of a loss, a trauma, whether you become more spiritual or you feel like you're part of the greater good, or making meaning is really significant when you experience a loss, because it's not just one loss in life, it's many, many losses, and it's painful and it doesn't go away. Grief is a lifetime process that ebbs and flows. So we need to recognize that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And Jason, this book, it starts off with stories. And I think that is what draws people in, because you can immediately connect. And so we already went over, you were a recruit on 9/11, just like, all right, you're out there. Let's see how these folks do. And I think what's important is, as the book expands into the different subject matters, you can chronicle your stories and how it shaped your career and how you dealt with retirement. What would you say, knowing, Barbara's coming in with all this grief, knowledge and thanatology. Did I get that? Did I pronounce it right?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. And
Took me a while.
I gotta write that down.
Yeah. How did you unpackage these stories that you're determined to tell in the book in a healthy way? Because it had to bring so much back for you.
Well, boy, you hit the nail on the head, and it sure did bring a lot back as I was writing, and I didn't realize how much it would. Barbara and I had a really nice system where we would just have a nice tandem back and forth with our work, and I would always consult with the boss, my wife, before I sent anything over to her. And as I was reading it out loud to her, I found myself often tearing up, and like, why is this happening? Right? Because I never told those stories out loud. I never wrote them down. And it did start to peel back the onion. But it really made for Barbara. Barbara was very unique in that she had the skill set to help work through some of these stories with me and provide a greater understanding of really what was going on. And, when you mentioned sharing stories, and you said that when we share, we connect, that is so, so true. But too often in our culture, we're afraid to. We're afraid to, for a whole plethora of reasons, right? To talk about the stigma, confidentiality. We can go on and on about them, but too often we go to what I say is our isolation island, because we try to figure it out on our own, and we don't share, we don't connect, and people care how you make them feel, not how much you know. So by telling the stories in the book, starting with that, we start with the heart, right? We start with personal stories, and then we throw the education in right behind it. And that has been probably one of the biggest reasons for my growth from throughout my entire journey, has been that education behind understanding what I'm feeling, understanding, hey, wait a minute, maybe if I would have looked at it this way, I could have mitigated some of the stress, some of the fallout from particular, stories that are in the book. I didn't have it back then. So the whole purpose of going all the way back to that recruit, to the minute he or she steps in those academy doors, to say, it's not when, not if, but when you're going to experience stress. Here's what it's going to look like, feel like, sound like, right? And it's not going to be your fault. When we say ask for help, that's great. And I want folks to believe that they can ask for help and feel like they can. But if you're going 100 miles an hour down the highway and you slam on your brakes, that's dangerous, right? It's not so easy. So to say ask for help, we don't know we need it most of the time. And if we do know we need it, it's very hard to pump those brakes. And I know I kind of just went off there on a tangent, but starting with our stories, following with a little bit of education has been therapeutic for me too throughout the writing journey.
Let me ask something, Jason. When we go back to let's go back to the academy, because I've been out of the academy for a long time.
Yeah,
I know you've been out 20 years, but a lot has changed since I was in the academy. And I was talking to an NYPD officer the other day, and we were talking about corruption, right? And when IAD comes in, or IAB, whatever you want to call them, comes into the academy class, once they leave and after they give you that little 4-hour speech, the academy instructor is like, don't even listen to them. Just do your thing out on the street, right? Have they changed with mental health? Do the instructors really embrace it and share it with the students when you get the mental health training? Do the instructors reinforce that in the academy, or do they just blow it off like they do with like an IAB thing?
So like you, I didn't have that.
Oh, okay.
Right. But I do know what's happening now. And there has been, now seeing this other side of law enforcement, the other side of the coin, and being in the mental health and the behavioral health field, working with providers and different hospital systems and whatnot. I see the work that's happening now, whether it be EAU employee assistance or the peer support programs. They're coming into the academies and talking about resilience, right? How to build resilience, the peer-to-peer, how important that is, where you can reach out inside the department for confidential help. And it could be confidential all day long, but there's going to be a portion of us that say, great, I hear that, I appreciate it, don't trust it. And that's why it's important to have those outside department resources.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Are the instructors reinforcing the importance of mental health? Because they, a new recruit, be it fire, police, EMS, whatever it is, they're very impressionable. So they're led by, they listen to what their instructors say. So that's a big thing. And I know with me in the academy, whatever my instructor said, these people that would come in and be like, I don't listen to them, just do this, and you'll be fine. I'm just hoping that our instructors now are not taking that same role they did 20 years ago.
So I guess it's individually specific, right? You're going to find, I think, both. No matter what has changed, you're going to find both. You're going to have certain folks that are stuck in their ways. It is happening now. I do know that's happening in the academies. I can only speak to the NYPD. I can't speak, for everyone. Right. But you bring up a point that it's important to have outside the Leo world, outside the blue world to lean on, right? Because if you don't have that different perspective, if you don't have that person saying, hey, wait a minute, did you ever look at it this way? Or how about this way? I'm sure we'll talk about culture and our tribe, but it's important to have that outside opinion, outside your instructors, outside your partners.
Absolutely. Yep. And we'll talk about cultural competence and leaning on other people when we come back from our next break. We'll be right back, everybody. Stay tuned.
Look, when you need to respond to an aggressive situation to protect yourself, your family, or your property, understanding your firearm and legal position are critical. Officers know your skills are only as good as your commitment to training. So know what you're doing. So when you're in a vulnerable situation, we can count on your response. Whether you're a beginner or a licensed gun carrier, Carry in Texas offers basic firearms training, Texas permitless carry courses, license to carry, and basic 2A courses so you can understand the responsibilities, situational awareness, and learn the technical skill required when you carry your firearm. Go to carryintexas.com to find the right course for you. Join me, former United States Secret Service agent Samantha Horwitz on the range for beginner basics, LTC prep, and range practice. Go to carryintexas.com today. That's carryintexas.com.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam, powered by the OBBM Network. Our guests, Jason and Barbara, co-authors of Living Blue, are sharing their experiences. I said it right.
Yeah, I'm showing the book so everybody can go.
You said it wrong. I'm like, I did say Living Blue. You're just giving me the visual.
Living Blue, partner. I'm just giving the visual example.
I know, and I thank you for that because you know how my memory is. You guys shared such extraordinary experiences on both sides, and this collaboration into this book is going to bring such insight to some of our first responders. Like college. The academies don't have an approved reading list book, where colleges they'll give you these books and they'll say, I think these are the books that really need to be on an approved list for academy classes to be able to read these books and say, hey, just write a short paper on this to show that they did it. Wouldn't be a bad idea. It brings the new recruits closer to people like you guys. Maybe they don't have the chance to be able to see one of your seminars or be able to speak with you, but the book will bring them closer. It's something that I would think academies,
it is really so well done. We were talking before the show, and it is a go-to manual for officers so they know what they're going to experience. Like Jason said, it's not a matter of if, it's when, and then how to deal with that. That's part of building, we call it your resiliency toolbox. If you know what you're walking into, you can prepare, because life sucks when you go through something like, the traumas that we went through and we got no safety net, right?
I think
I froze for a second. We don't have access to people like Barbara, right? So we don't have access to people like Barbara. But if we're reading and we kind of have a map of what it looks like, and then we have, it's not just pulled out of it's like backed up by research, so we see that, and we have the resources, and we have things that help us go into the job healthy and stay healthy all the way through retirement. And Barbara, you follow up with stories like Jason tells from your perspective of, with your parents and watching what they went through, because your parents, I mean, talk about unique. Your mom didn't even get classified as a police officer, I think, until a lawsuit in like 1973. And then she was allowed to wear pants.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
but it's so true. But what I'm hearing is that so many of these new recruits go in with the understanding that it's going to be a stressful job and I may experience PTSD. But there's so much more to it. And that's what Jason and I wanted to do, is to show everybody it's not just stress, it's not just homeostasis and balance. It is about compassion fatigue. It is about knowing burnout and secondary traumatic stress is going to impact them in such a way that they're going to experience what Figley calls compassion fatigue, that they might also experience moral injury. So many police officers, I interviewed over 100 police officers for this book. So many mentioned that it was something they should have done, something they could have done. My leader screwed up, he didn't do what he was supposed to, but they didn't know the terminology, that it was moral injury. It's not just moral distress, that you have to get in touch with their belief system, their values, their principles. And when you walk into, as a first responder, knowing your principles and values, you're not going to be impacted by moral injury as much, because you're going to have the tools and strategies to deal with what this umbrella term is, vicarious trauma.
Right.
And so we have to teach them all these words and how to manage what these words do to their body, mind, and spirit.
And how you also have to bring in the families. Yes. It's also a how to not go to your island, Jason. You have a lot of stories in there about your wife and how you dealt with your family, the good, the bad, the ugly, and how we don't want to be in a I wish I did this better, because it's all right here. You can go in with the plan, knowing how to bring your family into the fold, because we all serve. It's a blue family. It's not like, you go do your job as a police officer, I'm doing my job as this. It bleeds over. And if we can have and deal with that in a healthy way, a lot of books separate it out. It's in here too. Barbara, can you touch on, both of you, can you touch on the family aspect?
Well, Jason, why don't you take that, because you were a young cop with a young family.
Yeah, just going back real quick, Barbara's talking about, you're going to experience PTSI, right? Stress, moral injury, but not take that on as a must. Well, this is my job. So you know what? I have to go through this. This is your job. You might very well go through this, but you don't have to own it. You don't have to now have that as your identity.
Yeah.
You're going to go through this, but there are ways to get through it. As far as family, I thought I could. My wife said, you always look at, and I think this is in there too, you always look at everything black and white. Sometimes it's gray. And I didn't look at the gray. I looked at either it's right, we're summoning someone, we're arresting someone, we're warning and admonishing them, we're doing something definitive. There is a definitive answer in our world. And when there's not that definitive answer in our own personal world, I think we often look for that. and we don't have it, it could really make for a difficult time. For a long time, didn't really see who was in my corner, right? I spent more time away from home than at home. And it took some really difficult times to really kind of shake me out of, hey, what do you really want? What are you working for? And I've said it before, bears repeating, if what we're doing, how we're doing it is taking us away from what we're doing and who we're doing it for, well, we need to change what we're doing, or at least how we're doing it, right? Because what is it worth? What is it for? And they're right in front of you. So if Living Blue is everyone that lives in our worlds when we're doing that job. My wife is just as much cop as I was, even though she didn't put the uniform on, right? Because she was waiting at home, right? Their spouse was waiting at home for us, his kids waiting at home for us. They grow up without us. And then we retire and we come back into a world we've been absent from for 20, 30, my partner, Steve, 40 years. It's important to bring them in the beginning. When you're walking in those doors as an academy recruit, that spouse, that family member needs to be involved from day one, because it's going to ebb and flow. You're going to have highs, you're going to have lows, and how you manage those in betweens are critical.
Jason, let me ask something, because you were in cold case, right? You're in a cold case squad. So like with that, homicide, that's a horrible thing because, you're dealing with, murder after murder or murder, homicides after homicides. With cold case, did solving a case give you any closure? Did it do anything for you mentally, going, I brought peace to this family? Or did it, because cold case is a unique field to be in. When you're closing cases that are 10, 15 years down the line, those families have still suffered. Like Barbara, you're saying, the grief timeline just never ends. So here you're closing cases and you're bringing I don't know what the word would be, but you closure to families who have suffered so long. Did that help in what you were doing in the NYPD?
So certainly, and you could probably relate to this, when you can solve a case or you can have a positive conclusion, and that could mean a couple of different things, right? Just because you made an arrest doesn't mean it's going to be prosecuted and fully, seen to the end. But when you can get that feels great. For me, those cold cases got me so ingrained in that family structure. I became so involved with that victim's family. No matter what happened with that case, being able to provide that loved one with a hope and now a new relationship with somebody who's fighting for their lost loved one, I now became part of their grief narrative. And I didn't know what that was in the beginning.
You don't lose your why.
It's a reminder every single day on what it is. But there's good and bad aspects of that, right? And I mentioned this, that I wouldn't change anything I did as far as the attention I gave those cases, but boy, you take a hit by every single day immersing yourself in that case. Those are what they need. Those are what they need. And sometimes you don't get that conclusion, but those are what they need. But I found the satisfaction in the relationships I built with the family members of those victims.
That's special, bro. That's special. God bless you for what you do. That's not an easy job to be part of.
Hey, before we take our last break, again, the book is called Living Blue. We've got authors Jason Palamara and Barbara Rubel on the podcast. If you are tuning in and listening on your favorite podcast app, the way to get the book, besides Amazon, is we want you to connect with Jason and Barbara, because as you've heard, their experience goes really deep. So Jason, you can reach out to him at jasonpalamara.org, and that's Jason, common spelling, and his last name is PALAMARA.org. It'll be in the show notes. And Barbara Rubel, she can be reached at griefworkcenter.com, exactly how it sounds. And we got to take our last break. We'll be right back.
To the Health Engineer Show. I'm Cliff Ducoy, the Health Engineer, right here on the Offbeat.
Hi, I'm Larry Cortana. This is
Hi, my name is Susan Hamilton, and you're watching Offbeat.
Hi, this is Doreen Milano. Welcome to Big Ideas Small Business, where we will talk to Terry Arjala.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam. with Jason and Barbara, co-authors of Living Blue. A must read on any level. If you're a family member, if you're a first responder, if you're just thinking about getting into the field, this is going to give you the resources, the tools, the knowledge, some background, and it's another tool for your toolbox. It's something else you can use for your mental health stability. And I think this is great. So thank you guys for really sharing this with our audience, sharing this with all our first responders across the country. It's huge.
Yeah, I think a good place to kind of wrap up here, Barbara and Jason, is the conversation that you guys have with the departments. Barbara and Jason, you're both speakers. You're out there. What is the biggest thing that the chiefs, because ultimately, the chiefs got to get the money from city council or however it is in where they work. What's the biggest thing that they need to do to provide for their folks?
Communication. They need to walk the walk and not just say, go to your EPA or, speak to somebody, but actually say, I'm struggling too. Or I remember when, I recently did a keynote and I was on a panel and and I even mentioned it in the book, how the fire chief was talking about his own struggles. And then we went on to someone else in the panel and I said, wait a second, thank you. And I looked at him and I said, thank you so much for sharing as a chief, as a fire chief. And everybody stood up and applauded this man. I was going to break out in tears. It was such a beautiful moment because he said, I struggled and it's okay to talk about it, whether you are a leader, a supervisor, a new recruit, just share it, talk about it, and get well.
You see that reflect when we do our workshops. You see something like that reflect in the manpower that they oversee. When a chief is that transparent and that open, you see such officers that are mentally stable, that are strong and are able to speak, even with firefighters. But it's got, like Sam says, it's got to start at the top. It's got to start with the chief opening that up and opening that door for the people that you lead.
Or somebody going to the chief to say, hey, chief, this, I'm noticing this. This is what I think we should implement. What do you think? From time to exercise.
Open. Yeah. You could see from our book, we had over 70 chiefs in the book talking about mental health, their own struggles. We are going to take this smash the stigma phrase and actually move it forward to save lives. That's the bottom line. Dads and moms have to go home. There are spouses and parents and siblings and children waiting for them to come home.
John, we talk about chiefs, and we'll circle right back to how you started, Sam, and that's sharing stories, and that don't tell me, show me. And when you're shown by somebody in leadership that it's okay to feel what I'm feeling, I might sit in the back of the room and not say a word at one of your events, but I'm hearing it, I'm seeing it, and maybe it'll work for me a week from now, a month from now, or a year from now when I'm having an episode or a stressful culmination of all these things that are going on at work. And I remember I hearken back to what I saw or what I heard. And maybe that's a strength I need, right? Plant seeds you may never sit under, or trees you may never sit under. You never know how you're going to affect somebody that's listening to your story or just hearing you share. Whatever it is you're sharing, as small as it is, we can say all day long that we're here, reach out. But doing things like this, getting out there, speaking in front of people that might be sitting in that room struggling is critical, is huge.
And have an attitude of gratitude. If you're struggling with so many negative things in your life, just stop for a moment, pause, look, maybe a moment of awe, look outside. It's pitch black. It's late here on the East Coast, as you can see from my background, but take a moment of gratitude. What are you grateful for? Focus on that.
I'm glad you said that, Barbara, because I have that marked in the book. We are conditioned to focus on the negative because that's what we live in every single day. And one of my friends, I'm gonna post this later in the week, is like, a picture that what's our excuse, right? We can do it too. All right. And it takes you getting off the 100-mile-an-hour, taking a pause and being like, I'm not on the path to success here. I got to take a step back. Let's flip the script. What am I grateful for? Who are the people that are going to be there when I get off this shift? And learn to look for the good and be grateful for the good. Keep a gratitude journal. Keep it small enough where it's in your pocket, in your squad car, wherever you're going, so that you can flip through it. You're writing something down, so it's going up here. It's positive thought, and you can go back to it at any time. You guys, there's so much in this book. This could be like a 5-hour podcast. But everybody, seriously, if you are connected, and it's not just, don't consider this a manual just for our Leos out there. This is a manual to deal with the stress of being a first responder and how to build your resiliency and your wellness plan. You talk about sleep, you talk about working out. You got to get this. Please pick up the book. Thank you guys so much for coming on, for your wisdom, for your knowledge, for helping everybody listening grow tonight, for putting your thoughts in the most meaningful and most difficult stories of your lives, memorializing in this book so that we can grow from your stories. It's not always easy. But definitely there is growth out of grief. I think it
is vicarious growth. That's what it is. Vicarious growth. It's not just vicarious trauma.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
I like that we're taking steps forward.
Exactly. Connect with Jason, connect with Barbara. Their websites have been up throughout the podcast. If you're listening on your favorite podcast app, it's jasonpalamara.org. and griefworkcenter.com. Again, it'll be in the show notes, so you'll be able to go back through there and connect directly. They both do speaking engagements, their peer support, etc. So don't be strangers. These are two humans that you want alongside you throughout your career. If you're just starting, if you're in the midst of your career, reach out to them. And even when if you're like, I need to retire, reach out to them, because they talk about retirement and doing it the right way in the book. John, do you have anything else before we?
It just goes back to when the music stops. That's when we really get inside our own heads. This book is going to give you the necessary tools to stay out of that negative aspect and really live a healthy life further on. And not having. We've grown so much, and we're continuing to grow, and it's because of Jason and Barbara that more lives will be saved in our first responder communities. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for sharing this hour with us.
Yes.
We will be in touch for sure.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Oh my God, fantastic. Like I said, this could have been a 5-hour podcast, but I will reiterate it again. Pick up this book.
I am going to order the book. I'm ordering. Yeah. I'm going to order the book and I'm going to read it. No, I'm going to sit down and I'm actually going to read it. When you talk about tools to use, either working out, I am actually going to sit down and I'm going to read this book, because just listening to it and hearing you guys speak about it seems so intriguing. Even if it takes me a month to read it, I'm going to go through it. I'm going to sit back in my new little studio back here, and I'm going to take the time. I'm going to read it because I think it's worth it.
It is absolutely worth it. Hey, we want to thank everybody who tunes in every week. So appreciate you. Keep clicking that like and subscribe button. And, we need to open the doors to more first responders to be able to get the access like we talked about on the show tonight. If you want to bring a workshop that we do here at A Badge of Honor into your department, reach out to us here. All of our events, this is where you find us. We have the resources. So you are not alone. You have a safety net. Just scroll down on the homepage, click on it, take you right to a number or a website. Tell them a Badge of Honor sent you, or reach out to us direct, and we can help you there. Again, tomorrow, tune in if you want to watch the replay on Roku. And these guys right here carry the load. They are no strangers to what we talked about. We are so blessed to be nonprofit partners with them in the fight to smash the stigma, to assist veterans and first responders, and, you know, in their struggle. Because the more resources we have, we are one giant team in this, the better off we will be, the better off our communities will be, because we interact on a daily basis. And I have to give a shout out. We failed to mention, and Jason failed to mention, that he is also a U.S. Navy veteran. So yeah, it's carrytheload.org. You can find out more by visiting our website as well. To all of the first responders out there, we pray for you every single day. Thank you for what you do to keep us safe in our communities, at home. For the veterans out there, thank you for fighting the good fight, for allowing John and I. That's why we get to do a show like this. It's not censored. We can say whatever we want. Thank you, veterans out there. And for all of our active duty personnel across the globe, thank you for keeping our shores safe. And John, take us home.
I just want to give a big shout out once again, when we're speaking about magazines and books and tools, to Michael Barron of the Blues magazine for really letting a Badge of Honor get all word out each and every month on that magazine. If you're a first responder, if you're in law enforcement, every month, the Blues magazine, Michael Barron sends it out. It's a free publication. It has so many different articles that can help you get through your tour throughout the country, interviews, articles that are a huge resource for our first responders. So check that out. I want to give a big shout out to Mike for really allowing us to be part of that as well.
Absolutely. And with that, everybody, we will see you next week. Take care. Thanks.
A Badge of Honor podcast is produced for the OBBN Network podcast and protected under copyright law. For content permissions, please submit your request to abadgeofhonor.com on the content page. For OBBN Network programming information, please call 214-714-0495 today.